G'day ladies and gentlemen, the Buttsman here, and in Australia we are so very lucky to every single night have one show on TV that is absolute verbal diarrhea. It's called The Project, and if you have watched any of my videos on The Project that I've done in the past, you will be very, very aware that they are just the fucking worst. The Project is basically where all the real progressive Melbourne journalists jump on the panel and have a chat to the wokest comedians that ever existed. And basically everyone in the Australian population sits back and goes, fuck the lot of you.
Wow, every day, women are told how to behave.
Do you actually like this?
But this time the Project's gone too far. They've come after my boy, Joe Rogan. And as president of the Australian chapter of the Joe Rogan Dick Riders, I am not pleased. I must defend his honour, just like I did the other week when I had a crack at H3H3 or Ethan Klein's comments about Joe Rogan. He attacked him on social media claiming that Joe Rogan is spreading medical misinformation. And it seems like the entire world right now is just trying to destroy Joe Rogan. It's all over Twitter. All of these people claiming that they're going to leave Spotify because they won't censor Joe Rogan. Who would have thought so many people were pro-censorship? It is absolutely astounding. Now, there's a lot of people who are, defending Joe Rogan, a lot of high-profile people, a lot of low-profile people, including me. And what do people think about that? Well, this is a video in relation to me making that video about Joe Rogan defending his honour. Isaac Butterfield pathetically white knights Joe Rogan. So what? I know this video about me pathetically white knighting Joe Rogan gets big views. Look at that. Jesus Christ, that's almost a classroom. I know I sucked Joe Rogan off on this channel, so fucking what? I love you, Joe. Please let me kiss your head. If you haven't been following the story, Joe is a menace to public health. Doctors demand Spotify puts an end to COVID lies on the Joe Rogan Experience. That was an article from the Rolling Stone, and it was followed up with an article from The Guardian 2 days later, when they found out that most of the doctors were actually not doctors at all. Menace to public health. 270 experts criticize Spotify over Joe Rogan's podcast. I wonder what changed over those 2 days to take them from doctors to just experts.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
So people are demanding that Joe be taken off Spotify. Now, the question is why? Why are they demanding this? Well, on Joe's podcast, he has had some medical experts, some people who know what the fuck they're talking about on his show that people don't love. And when I say people, I mean one side of the argument, the mainstream narrative. Some of these people he's had on his show are questioning that mainstream narrative, and that pisses people off because rather than having a debate in this time and age, we just basically go with what the government has told us and we refuse to allow any other ideas to enter our craniums. That is why it is important to have Rogan on this planet talking to people who don't necessarily agree with the mainstream narrative. As if all that wasn't bad enough, now Neil Young, the muso Neil Young, wants Rogan gone. Well, at least he did about a week ago. He basically said, listen, you're either going to have me on Spotify or Joe Rogan. Now what does Spotify do? They say, hey Neil, old man, look at your life. Fuck off. And then came The Project.
Neil Young, he's the voice of a generation, and he's got a real issue with this guy.
I'm not a doctor, I'm a moron.
That's Joe Rogan. If you aren't familiar with his work, he's a comedian, UFC commentator.
Sure, get up here, bitch.
But these days, he's best known for his podcast.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah, a podcast that outperforms every single mainstream media outlet combined. Why? Because Joe has people on his podcast for 3 hours at a time. And you can go and listen to that. And this is the most important part, come up with your own conclusions, which you don't get to do with the nightly news or The Project. But anyway, go on.
Where he does pretty much whatever he wants.
Oh my God, are you serious? He gets to do whatever he wants? That's fucking crazy!
I hate when people do that.
Joe doesn't have enormous corporate interests. Well, he has Spotify now, but Joe doesn't have enormous corporate interests standing behind him. At least he never did back in the day, and it obviously seems like they don't have influence now. But I'd understand why the project and the people on the project would be upset about Joe talking about whatever he wants, seeing as the project is, produced by Channel 10, which is owned by CBS Viacom, which is, I wrote this down, how much is that worth? 30 billion Australian dollars. Yeah. I'm sure you guys are doing everything for the people.
Which during the pandemic includes giving anti-vax campaigners a platform.
One of the most qualified people in the world to talk about vaccines.
Usually, if there's a medicine or a treatment that is disagreed upon by some people in the medical community, debate is encouraged. But not anymore. You're not allowed to.
Spruiking horsewormer Ivermectin as a COVID treatment.
But what's crazy is look how better I got.
Yeah.
I got better pretty quick, bitch.
Deliberately misleading. That is a lie, all right? Joe took a drug that, yes, is used on horses sometimes, in the same way that some dogs take anti-anxiety medication if they're really anxious. They're used for animals and people. But originally, that particular drug was used to help people with parasites. In fact, river blindness, a massive issue in Africa, was almost eradicated. Is this what you're saying, Project? Should we go over to those little kids in Africa that don't have river blindness and say, you're a fucking idiot for taking horse dewormer, you dumb? The jury is out on whether or not it works for the Rona, but we will never know the truth because it is political at this point. But the project are being deliberately deceptive here. They know that Rogan took several different drugs, and he has said several different times on his podcast that he doesn't know what worked. Was it one of them? Was it all of them? Was it a combination? Who the fuck knows? Certainly this fuckwit who's doing the voiceover on this has no idea.
I think one of the challenges with podcasts like Joe Rogan's is a lot of the listeners are caught in this cycle of propaganda appearing to be news, and they're in a misinformation loop that they can't get out of.
Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever watched this thing called the fucking news? Every day, telling you why you should be terrified. War, famine, fires, floods, it's all fucked. Imagine being caught up in that crazy cycle of propaganda. How about you fuck off, lady?
So this week, Neil Young decided to take on the streaming behemoth.
Spotify has a responsibility to mitigate the spread of misinformation on its platform.
Well, I guess the issue that everyone has with this is what is defined as misinformation and who defines it.
For Neil, this matter is personal. He's a survivor of polio, catching it as a young boy before a vaccine was available.
Hang the fuck on. Did you just compare polio to the Rona? You fucking slimy dogs.
I want you to let Spotify know immediately today that I want all my music off their platform. They can have Rogan or Young, not both.
Spotify picked Rogan.
When I say something stupid, I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say before I say it. I'm just saying it.
I love how they just discredit Joe throughout this entire thing. They don't talk about anything he's actually said. They just discredit him and make him look like a silly boy. It's fucking infuriating, really. Like all the people sitting at home, they put their vibrators down for a second and watch the project. They think that this guy is insane. When in reality, he has the most open forum that exists. Joe's not even saying to listen to him. In fact, he's saying the opposite. Don't listen to him. Listen to the people that he brings on that are experts and then form your own decision. But the media, right, which includes the project, they hate informed people because informed people do something very strange when they watch shows like the project, right? They sit there and they go, that's not right, that's incorrect, that's fucking stupid. And the project would never be successful, even though the viewers are dropping every single week. They would never be successful if everyone who watched it was informed. They love dumb.
Earlier this month, more than 1,300 scientists and medical professionals signed an open letter, also calling on Spotify to stop the Rogan experience.
I am genuinely shocked and concerned by how many people demand censorship when someone says something that they don't agree with wholeheartedly, or they disagree with. It is crazy. It is absolutely fucking nuts. And the biggest issue with all this, it isn't rock hard science. We won't know the whole scope of all of this shit for years. But We look at people who say things that are outside the mainstream narrative as crazy, and that is fucking dumb.
Sometimes it is debunked on his show. You probably know Josh Zepps. He's Australian broadcaster, entertainer. He's been on this show a bunch of times. He has history with Joe Rogan. They had worked together previously, I think, and went on his show recently armed with some facts about COVID and something called myocarditis.
Wow, it's almost like having two people debate something is a good thing. We get to the bottom of it. Wow, isn't that crazy? When Josh Zepps went on Joe Rogan's podcast and informed him about some other articles talking about this myocarditis, it was eye-opening for Joe. He questioned, after this conversation, he questioned whether or not those sources were reliable, and then everyone on the project laughed at that, even though that's a pretty valid question. And if in any scientific argument, you would ask that question, obviously, otherwise you're a pretty shit scientist. But without this form of conversation, without the opportunity to talk to people who disagree with each other, we never get to the bottom of things. That is the world we live in. It is a bad world to be in, where the government controls the narrative. Bad. The great thing is you can't cancel Joe Rogan. You can't do it. He's too big. Joe's doing a great thing. Whether or not you agree with his stances on some things, that matters not. You should be able to have differing opinions. But I think it comes down to this. Anyone who disagrees with Joe Rogan or thinks he should be censored has never listened to the podcast. And that's so common with anyone who gets cancelled. Anyone who gets cancelled, usually people just haven't taken into context what they're talking about or who they are as a person. Ladies and gentlemen, do me a favour. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it and turn on your post notifications. Be a good motherfucker. Peace in the Middle East, my dick stinks. And hey, project, fuck you to the moon.